Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on Boxing and Lily. So, today we're talking about the monster, Inoue, who obviously just made another performance in America, something American boxing fans were asking for quite some time, and they got what they asked for. Unfortunately, many of the people asking for it complained about it afterwards, because unfortunately these people are not boxing fans, they're just haters. And it doesn't matter what Inoue does, some people are just never going to be satisfied because he does not look like them. And that's the racial profiling and racial negativity that unfortunately we get too much of on YouTube. The great news about Inoue is he's not letting that and them impact his career. He's doing exactly what you would want a great boxer to do, which is continue to do great things in the sport. Obviously, coming off of his fight in the US, it's already announced that he's going to be fighting MJ Akhmedov, a fighter that many people said he was ducking, which of course is a blatant lie. He's going to be fighting him in August or September in Japan, which is going to be a huge fight. Obviously, MJ, once Inoue beats him, people are going to find ways to discredit MJ and act as if he's nothing really that exciting as far as an opponent, because that's the problem with many of these so-called boxing fans. They look for ways to discredit certain fighters while overvaluing fighters that look like them. The reality is MJ was an Olympic medalist. He's a unified world champion. He's a fighter that obviously brings a lot of amateur pedigree to the sport. He's fast, he's powerful, technically he's very good as well. So it's a real different opponent from a lot of the guys that Inoue has previously fought. MJ is not the biggest or tallest or longest fighter, which is an interesting matchup. It'll be interesting to see Inoue fight somebody that's basically a similar size to him, somebody that he's not giving up such height and reach advantages to. And we'll see if he is a different fighter in this. Obviously, depending on who he fights, we've seen different versions of Inoue in his career, obviously taking on different challenges with different skill sets. Against MJ, it's going to be very interesting seeing him against a guy that's technically very good, has very fast feet, fast hands, something that maybe we haven't necessarily seen Inoue fight previously. So that's going to be a very intriguing matchup. And the good news is the next fight afterwards is already in discussion, right? The next fight is already in discussion. We've heard rumors that Saudi Arabia and Turki Al-Sheikh wanted to do a fight between Inoue and Nick Ball. And obviously that would be for him becoming a 5-weight world champion, which is historic. You can't tell me 10 people in boxing history who become 5-weight world champions. So if Inoue's able to do that, that's pretty historic right there, and it definitely solidifies him as a future Hall of Famer. If he's able to win, that is. Obviously, I always thought the Nick Ball opponent was probably the most intriguing matchup for him to fight a guy at 126. It's a guy that is not a huge 126-pound world champion, unlike an Espinoza or a Ray Vargas or an Angelo Leo or other fighters that obviously have a lot of height and reach advantage over Inoue. Nick Ball is similar size to Inoue. What he's known for is being aggressive, physically strong, a guy who brings it to you, puts it in your chest, and makes you fight him off you. And tell me that doesn't sound like a fantastic matchup for Inoue, a guy who also loves to get in on the guy and throw punch for punch. Now you put a guy like Nick Ball in front of him, obviously a guy who's very different from MJ, right? A guy very different than Cardenas, a guy very different than a Luis Neri, a guy very different from obviously Fulton. So that style matchup is going to be very interesting, and that fight probably is going to be done in the UK, which is going to be huge, right? This is going to be the second time Inoue's fought in the UK. Obviously, he fought in the World Boxing Super Series on the undercard of a Josh Taylor fight before. So it would be fantastic to see him go back. We'll see the UK market embrace him. And obviously for a guy who's becoming a global superstar in the sport of boxing, it's great to see him go around the world taking on big opponents, big names in big venues. So I'm super excited about that fight. It's being rumored that that would potentially happen in December. But of course, a lot of this is tentative, depending on how Inoue fares in his fight against MJ. If he gets off healthy, no cuts, no injuries. Obviously, being a boxer, you never know what kind of things can happen to you moving forward. Come on, Lily. So, think about that. In 2024, leading into 2026, Cardenas, MJ, Nick Ball. And then, of course, the cherry on top is a fight that's already been confirmed by boxing fans. And that is a matchup between Inoue and Junto Nakatani. Obviously a guy whose next fight is going to be a unification fight at 118 pounds versus the WBO champion at that weight class. That's going to be great. I'm very interested to see how Junto looks against another undefeated world champion to unify for the first time of his career. Junto, again, stylistically, very different fighter from an MJ and obviously from a Nick Ball. He's a taller fighter, a longer fighter. He's a southpaw. He's a guy that's able to control range, has great power from outside, is able to establish his jab and keep guys on the outside and catch them with huge punches when they do try to get on the inside. And so that style matchup is very exciting as well. I'm really intrigued to see Inoue fight three great fighters, all of whom are far different from one another, to see the differences we can see in Inoue's performance. If he's able to get through MJ, Nick Ball, and of course Junto Nakatani, there's going to be a huge argument why he deserves to be pound for pound the #1 fighter in boxing. Obviously, certain individuals who only think about race when they talk about these kind of lists, they're going to, of course, talk about Bud Crawford being on the pound for pound list, and there's no way they're ever going to talk about him ever being off that list, regardless of what happens, whether he loses to Canelo or whether he wins against Canelo. The truth is, if he wins against Canelo, it's going to make it hard for anyone to put Usyk or Inoue above him. But if he loses to Canelo, then it's only going to make it that much easier to find ways to, of course, put Usyk and Inoue above him. Justifiably so. Obviously not hate or anything else, but when you lose a fight, come on. When you lose a fight, obviously that's going to slide you down a pound for pound list. Other fighters going on, getting great victories and doing historically great things in their career, obviously that's going to help elevate them up the pound for pound list. So we have to wait to see what happens with Bud Crawford and Canelo. Obviously that's a huge fight and one well worth paying attention to. And then of course we know Usyk is going to be fighting Daniel Dubois coming up soon. And it's been mandated that the winner is going to be fighting Joseph Parker, which is also fantastic. I would love to see Usyk finish his career with victories over Dubois and then Parker, and then retire an undefeated heavyweight, undisputed champion. That would be a great end to a fantastic career if he's able to do that. Obviously, there's no guarantees in the sport of boxing. And then Inoue taking on fighters like Nick Ball, MJ Akhmedov, and Junto Nakatani. These three fighters are definitely showing you why they are the three guys that are discussed as the best fighters in boxing today, along with, of course, Bivol, who also definitely deserves to be on that list. He will be rematching in the trilogy fight versus Better Biet later on in 2025. And it'll be interesting to see what he does moving forward as well. Possibly, we could see him in a rematch with Canelo Alvarez. If Canelo Alvarez is able to go in there and look good against Bud Crawford, then the Bivol rematch definitely is going to be a fight that you could see Turkey and Canelo being very excited to push forward. If he loses to Bud Crawford, then obviously he's going to be going in a very different direction. If it's a close competitive fight, we could obviously see a rematch between Canelo and Bud, which obviously both guys would love. Big money on the table for that kind of fight as well. So, as far as boxing's going, I can't see why people consistently are pushing such negativity towards it. I've just broken down the 3-4 biggest fighters in boxing and why they're doing exactly what any fan would want them to do. Taking on great opponents, doing legacy type maneuvers, staying consistent and fighting a lot. And these are the kind of things that really elevate people into the pound for pound conversation. All I know, it's going to be very interesting to see how the end of this year unfolds. Obviously, anything can happen, and that's definitely going to determine the next pound for pound list, right? You know, there's no guarantees for Inoue beating guys like MJ, Nick Ball at another weight class, and then potentially Junto Nakatani. There's no guarantees that Bud Crawford beats a Canelo Alvarez. There's no guarantee that Bivol is going to beat Beterbiev in the rematch. He's already lost one fight, and at certain points in the second fight, it looked as if Beterbiev was going to take him apart. Obviously, he rebounded and ended the fight fantastic, and that's why he won the second fight. And then, of course, you know, these fighters deserve tons of praise, tons of credit, and that's me as a boxing fan. That's all I want to do. Give these fighters that are actually taking on challenges, proving that they're great, the credit they deserve. And I'm super excited to see Inoue against these next 3 opponents. Obviously, we'll wait to see what happens as far as the Nick Ball fight. The one issue regarding that, of course, was the possibility that he moves up in weight to become a 5-weight world champion, but then he's going to move back down to 122, where he's undisputed, to challenge Junto Nakatani, who of course would move up in weight to challenge him. Does that mean he's going to be a champion at both 126 and 122? Or would he just get the 126-pound belt, kind of like Canelo did when he beat Kovalev, and then move back down to a comfortable weight to continue his career? For me, I think that's the fight, the maneuver that makes the most sense for guys like Inoue, with possible Junto Nakatani fights, potential Bam Rodriguez fights in the future. Those are the biggest and best fights in boxing for a guy like him. So it makes far more sense to stay at a comfortable weight where you can be your best and wait for these kind of fighters to move to your division to take on huge challenges. Of course, we know haters are going to look for him to move to divisions where anybody potentially could beat him, so they can go about how he was overrated, how he was exposed, how he was never that good, because this is what those guys do, right? Consistently. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you stoked to see Inoue versus MJ, Nick Ball in the UK, and then Junto Nakatani in what would be the biggest fight in Japanese boxing history, and not a guaranteed win? This is the kind of fight where, similar to the Canelo Alvarez Bud Crawford fight, I'm kind of 50-50. I think either guy could win. I think Junto has all the possibility of beating Inoue at 122 pounds, just like I think Bud Crawford has all the possibility of beating Canelo at 168. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Peace out.